Hello there, Force of Will players. My name's Charlie DeMille, and today what I wanted to talk about was a couple cards from the new set, Game of Gods. There have been, it's been a little bit weird with trying to figure out how their effects fully work, what they apply with, how they work, etc., etc. So I just wanted to kind of clear the air. They're the only real ones we've had issues with, and this is all within the context of the current CR. If we get a CR update for one of them, which I don't think we will, it kind of makes sense with how it works, then I'll update this. But otherwise, this is just everything we have in context with the current CR. I won't be going over Revolution Order or anything like that, because we don't have the CR for it, so I actually just don't know how it's supposed to function. We've had differing information from the Q&As and then the release stuff on how Revolution Order seems like it's supposed to function. So I'll make a video about that when our CR is actually released for Game of Gods, but until then I'm just going to go over some rulings that we have that we know how they function based on the current CR. That might be a little confusing. So to start off with, we have Hanzo, Ninja of the Moon. So Hanzo, the thing that might be that's kind of confusing people and seems a little weird is his enter effect when he's revolutioned. So when he is revolutioned ordered, his enter effect says you may pay X. If you do, put X Wind Moon Edition tokens into the field and recover up to X target magic stones you control. So for this effect, you do pay the X amount on resolution. You do not pay when the effect is put onto the chase. However, because in this part where he says recover up to X target magic stones you control, there is a targeting requirement as part of the enter effect, which means that you determine the value of X when the enter goes on to the chase, okay? So, or before the enter goes on to the chase, I should say. So, and you determine it right here at 903.2 G3. So I've made a video about this before, where X is determined at two different locations, or I've at least talked about this before in some of my other videos. So it's referenced here at 903.2 G, and it's also referenced when cards are resolving down here at 903.3 B-1. So the difference between the two when X is determined, the primary difference is if anything related to X is needed to pay cost, it's related to playing the actual card. So if there's an X value within the cost of a card, if number of targets is required because you need to target before the enter effect, you need legal targets before the enter effect can go on the chase, etc., etc., information on certain targets, so on and so forth. So for Hanzo, right, he requires you to target magic stones, and you cannot choose the same target multiple times with the same effect. An effect can only target one entity on its own, basically. So if it said up to X target resonators and you only had 2 resonators, X could only be 2. Same kind of instance here. If you only have 2 magic stones, X cannot be more than 2. You need to have a legal number of targets in order for Hanzo's effect to go on to the chase to determine X. So, in that sense, Hanzo's X effect can never be greater than the number of magic stones that the player currently controls, alright, at the time that the enter effect would be played. So, at that point when you're playing the effect, you determine the value of X. So if I have 3 stones, I can choose X equals 3. Even if one of those stones is tapped. Even if I don't have 3 available mana, I can choose X equals 3. X equals 3 is a legal amount to choose. I cannot choose X equals 4, though. Even if I already control moons, so I have extra mana via Hanzo or some other mana dork thing or anything like that, if I only have 3 magic stones, I cannot make X be greater than 3 for that enter effect of Hanzo. So, with that being said, you've now determined the value of X. You've determined it here as the card is being played at 903.2 G-3. Next, the enter effect, the you may pay X, you may pay whatever you've determined, in our scenario 3. That is paid on resolution, and it's a may. So you may pay that amount. And if you do pay that amount, right, if you do, you put that amount of Wind Moon additions into the field and recover the stones that you targeted. So you can choose on resolution of the enter effect of Hanzo to not pay the amount you declared, okay? So in the event of you have 3 stones and you have the 3 mana to sink into it, but your opponent tried to do something in response and then you tapped a bunch of your mana and now you only have 1 left, so you can't pay that 3 value, you just simply do not pay that 3 value, right? If maybe you could potentially use it as like a bluff on your opponent, like, oh, I'm going to produce all these moons or something like that, and then you just choose not to do it at the end of the enter, that's also an option. If something like, I don't know, if you would somehow lose the game by putting in however many moon additions that you were putting in off of his effect, you can choose just to not pay and put in those moon additions, okay? So that is how Hanzo works, where, again, the main stipulations is X cannot be greater than the amount of magic stones the player controlling the enter effect currently controls. X is determined when the enter effect is played, okay? So when the enter effect is going on to the chase, before either player has any priority sequence after it, X is determined. And then, on resolution of the effect, you may choose to pay whatever the value of X was. Okay? So that's how Hanzo works. A little bit weird. Honestly, if this target magic stone stuff was not here, it would be so much cleaner, functionally. But it's there. So, next one is not specifically Praying Valkyrie, but this effect, if this card would be put into a graveyard, blah, blah, blah. And then if an effect you control would refer to the total cost of a light card in any zone, you may have it refer to that total cost +1 instead. So a lot of people have been asking me about how this functions with certain cards, specifically something like Keep the Faith, which I'll show you what that is. And like Odin enters the Game of Gods, etc., etc. Okay, so I wasn't fully clear on how these functioned either. I probably should have done more research before going into this pre-release, but I was going through a move and some other stuff. So, but I have clarification on it all, or at least a second opinion. So, how this functions is effects that would refer to the total cost of a light card. So take, for example, something like Odin enters the Game of Gods, the final effect of the Force Resonance Faith part, right? So it says destroy up to 1 target Magic Stone entity with total cost X or less, where X is the highest total cost among entities you control. So in this scenario, X is determined on play, right? Same kind of concept. X references the highest total cost among entities you control. It is not a target requirement. So, with X being determined on highest total cost, I don't think that's actually number of targets. Yeah. So, it won't be determined until resolution, I believe. So, with X being determined on resolution, it doesn't need a reference in order for the card to be played. So when the card resolves is when it starts referring to the card, at which point it's already kind of determined which card. And if that reference is a light card, so like for example the Mistletoe Sword, the 7-drop that's in the set, you can have it reference that total cost +1. Okay? So that is how that functions. Same thing with like the Brunhild effect and the other like increase effects. So if it references highest total cost effectively on resolution, it doesn't require a target or anything like that, this replacement effect can apply. For something like Keep the Faith, right? So Keep the Faith has put target non-magic stone, non-enchant card with total cost 1 or less from the grave into the field. Okay, and then, or put the Resonator half of an alternative card with 1 or less from your grave into the field. Okay. The card itself is not referenced until targeting is made. And so at which point, targets are picked kind of in this whole section, right? But I believe it's... Is it right here? Yeah. 903.2H. So it's right after X is determined. So, this is where targets are picked. So the card isn't referencing anything. This isn't referencing anything until a target is picked, at which point you can't apply the replacement effect yet because there's no card to reference, right? So in this sense, Keep the Faith cannot benefit from this effect, right? So it won't, Keep the Faith won't randomly become, I get a 2-drop or less from my grave instead, or a 4-drop if you have a bunch of them, or something like that. It'll always be a 1-drop, because the card itself cannot be referenced until the card has already been targeted, and you can only target a 1-drop, right? So, so that is how Keep the Faith functions, okay? But, like, for example, this effect right here, like, destroy target J-Ruler if you do draw cards equal to its total cost. That card, you target a J-Ruler, there's no cost determined, and then the resolution of the effect references the total cost, at which point you can apply the replacement. So basically, a good rule of thumb is if the card requires a specification or a target or anything like that related to cost, this replacement effect on Praying Valkyrie, Brunhild, etc. will not apply because the card needs to be targeted in order to be referenced. However, anything that applies on resolution, i.e. Odin enters the Game of Gods, this final effect of Keep the Faith, so on and so forth, will be able to use the replacement effect because it references on resolution for the cost. Okay? That's kind of the difference between the two. Sorry if that was a little confusing, but those are the main two things. So it's mainly been Hanzo and then this replacement effect that have been a little bit annoying. Those have been the only things that have come up so far, other than things that I just actually cannot answer at the moment without the new comprehensive rules. So that's just what I wanted to go over today. As you can see here, I'm using a functionally noob database. It's called Force of Wind. It's on forceofwind.online. You can see the URL up there. This was made by James Mount. He posted a link to it in the Force of Will Global Discord that he runs, as well as in the Force of Will Global Facebook group. So if you're on any of those, feel free to go there. Or you can just type in forceofwind.online. That'll bring you straight to this website. It's a very good database. He is also currently working on it still, so it's just functionally going to get better and better and better as it goes on, and he'll keep it updated. Great guy, great database. Couldn't ask for better. And it has all the cards from the new sets. So if you're looking for a database, feel free to use this. But that was just what I wanted to talk about. Again, I'll probably make a video about Force Revolution and stuff like that in the future. But until then, again, I was Charlie DeMel. Hope you have a great rest of your day.